Hello and welcome back to Podcasting as Praxis. I'm David, my pronouns are he and him.
Hi, I'm James, my pronouns are they and them.
Hi, I'm Jamie, my pronouns are he and him.
Hi, I'm Rob, and my pronouns are he and him.
I'm Alistair, and my pronouns are he and him.
Right, and we have plenty to talk about. This is yet another episode in which Rob was given some kind of free rein to go and find a thing, and he came back with something horrible. Full on cat bringing back dead animals energy.
Yeah, much like a cat with a dead bird in its mouth, I'm looking at you saying you approve of this, don't you? Don't you?
Yeah, but we'll get to that in a little bit. First off, let's cover some little shorter stories. I think, James, you're to start. You have something here that is...
So pertinent to my and others who listen to this podcast interest. The Council of Europe's been up to some fun stuff. The Council of Europe is currently working...
I'm pretty sure the Council of Europe is like an abstruse thing that is only of interest to me, but sure.
Well, I mean, they've done something that inadvertently is quite funny. Basically, right, what they have done on the surface level is they've been putting together a motion. They've voted to adopt a report on rising anti-LGBT abuse and sentiments around Europe, right? And beyond, also including, for example, Britain, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in this report, right, it specifically calls out a block of countries that it says have launched virulent attacks against LGBT plus citizens for years. Keyword, like, the countries have launched virulent attacks, right? Hungary, Poland, the Russian Federation, Turkey, and the United Kingdom.
Number one, baby, let's go.
Yeah, right. So you can almost picture that as being in reverse order. Obviously, you would expect that the observers from Britain who are in the room as this report is getting debated whether to accept it or not are proposing their motions on whether to remove certain parts of the report or not, because this is a thing you're allowed to do, apparently.
Did they want to remove all the parts that said we were bad?
Basically, yes. The report also had stuff on how gender-critical views are a challenge to democracy and basically how terfs can get in the sea, except in very polite language, right? Yeah, it was a pretty big deal, and so the UK tried to get themselves essentially taken out of it.
The EU is very much pro throwing people into the sea, is my recollection.
All right, time for a bit of EU pedantry. The Council of Europe is not the same as the European Council. They are, in fact, not of the same organizational structures, merely coincidentally named close to each other. They are not the same thing. Indeed, the one precedes the other. This has been your brief update on European pedantry. Hello, goodbye.
Yeah, they do all enjoy throwing people in the sea.
Yeah, they do, yeah.
Yeah, but that's more a European cultural thing, is what Rob is saying. It's not so much a specific to the European Union. Long after the European Union has ironically sunk into the sea, there will still be Europeans throwing people in the sea, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, obviously, this is no surprise to us, living on this cursed normal island, understanding that, yeah, anti-trans stuff has been quite a problem. But what the report's basically saying is, like, the state is making it happen, and you just need to kind of look at the BBC and go, yep, that fits. What's very funny about it, though, because I've said this was funny, and so far none of this is particularly funny. What's very funny is that Labour have a presence, right, in the room trying to, essentially shepherd and steer this. And the paragraph on gender-critical ideology that was specifically called out by the motion, Labour tried to get it just outright deleted from the report.
Amazing.
Labour basically tried to say, listen, like, being gender-critical is perfectly valid and...
and I value you, and you are valid.
Yeah, and the Council of Europe said, no, fuck off. You're a bunch of terfs, and just passed the whole thing. So, get fucked, Labour.
No notes.
Who knew the Labour Party were ineffectual?
I mean, it's good to know they're as ineffectual abroad as we are today. So the actual paragraph, I want to just read this for posterity. The Assembly condemns the highly prejudicial, anti-gender, gender-critical and anti-trans narratives which reduce the fight for the equality of LGBTI people to what these movements deliberately mischaracterize as gender ideology or LGBTI ideology. Such narratives deny the very existence of LGBTI people, dehumanize them, and often falsely portray their rights as being in conflict with women's and children's values. women's and children's rights, or societal and family values in general. All of these are deeply damaging to LGBTI people, while also harming women's and children's rights and social cohesion. Labour wanted that paragraph gone. That was it. They just want to take out that paragraph.
That's incredible.
I don't know about you, but I feel like staying and fighting.
I mean, I definitely feel like fighting them.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, if I was forced to stay there, I would be fighting. Yeah.
I mean, if they're gonna make me pay them £2 a month for the privilege to get into the meetings where I can windmill people, then I guess that's just what'll have to happen.
Yeah.
I hope this motion causes Rosie Duffield to blow a fucking gasket.
The entirety of the motion was in the draft resolution, delete paragraph 5, which is the paragraph I just read out.
Amazing. That's so good.
And what I love about this is that the rest of the representatives from Europe just all looked at them and went, no. I don't know what are Labour going to do when they're told no. Apparently just shut the fuck up and
what
stew in
are Labour
it.
going to do when they're told no? They're gonna like fucking, do you know what I mean, cry and piss their pants. That's what Labour are going to do. It's the Keith method.
Yeah, I was going to say, we know exactly what Labour would do when they're in control of the reports that they don't like. It's that they sweep them under the rug for as long as humanly possible, and then they actually just exonerate all the absolute cunts anyway. And because they haven't had control over this specific report, I imagine they're very, very fucking annoyed.
Everyone on that council, I would advise not to ride a cycle through London anytime soon.
I should also say they did have other motions they attempted to do to the overall thing as well, including one about separating support services by sex, right? And yeah, they were just shot down amid fierce criticism from fellow parliamentarians and activists. Just everyone told them to get fucked with their turf bullshit. So.
Oh well, we'll have to start our own European Union with like Poland and fucking Hungary or whatever.
Don't.
Well, I mean, the official list was... Sorry, Hungary, Poland, the Russian Federation, and Turkey, and the United Kingdom. So, I mean, yeah, you could start a European Union with the Russian Federation if you want.
Yeah.
We can finally bring back the Warsaw Pact.
But yeah, the Warsaw Pact for Defense Against the Trans, apparently.
The T in NATO stands for trans.
Oh, okay. That's fine. Let's move on from that, and then let's revisit a favourite topic: the energy markets. Yay!
Yay!
This is one of Rob's favourites, particularly. This is with regards to the energy company OVO, which...
What's this?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah, the energy company OVO, which...
Is that still in business, or is that also...
The energy company OVO is in the process of making a quarter of its workforce redundant, which is about 1,700 people.
I'm picturing them, every time you say OVO, I'm picturing fucking, what's his name from the original Star Trek? You know, the fucking the nuclear vessels guy.
Yeah, I just keep thinking in my head, unbidden. Just OVO wants to install a smart bulge detector in your home to save you money.
All I hear is uwu energy, and it's just like cat girls everywhere.
Yeah, they're trying to make a quarter of their workforce redundant, and a lot of these workers are represented by Unite. General Secretary of Unite, Sharon Graham, has obviously gone, oh, whoa, what's this? And as a result, has asked CEO Stephen Fitzpatrick what the fuck they've sent a total of £41 million to. £20 million of OVO's funds were loaned to other companies owned by the CEO Stephen Fitzpatrick, and a further 21 million went to the holding company wholly owned by Fitzpatrick himself, Imagination Industries, for brand royalty fees.
Not Made Up Incorporated.
By the way, I looked up Imagination Industries, and some of the fucking like fields that this company is involved in.
Are they investing in Nicolas Cage movies?
That would probably be a better investment than a lot of the shit they're trying to get involved with.
Are they heavily investing in Bitcoin Island?
Yeah, so Imagination Industries is solely owned by Fitzpatrick himself, and among his subsidiaries are loads of smaller energy companies, energy suppliers, and businesses such as car charging. For some reason, another subsidiary develops electrically powered vertical takeoff aircraft.
Yes!
What?
For some fucking reason.
I'm just picturing the local council offices where they've got a single strip of like charging lanes, right? And it's just like, Tesla, that Ford that's electric, and then just a fucking VTOL sitting across two lanes.
Stephen Fitzpatrick is such a fucking visionary. He looked at a fucking Osprey and thought, what if we stuck a load of batteries in one of these?
Oh, wouldn't it be cool if the flames were blue when it crashed?
So it's very funny that if these Sharon Graham's asked, well, sort of demanded that OVO opens up its books to see what the fuck's going on with all this money, which would be very funny because we'll have to learn what brand royalty fees are actually for.
Oh, I can tell you right now what brand royalty fees are for. They're just a fucking tax dodge. That's literally what they're for. Like, that's literally, this is like a really old trick. Like, if you don't know what it is, it's essentially you hive off, you say, Uwu Energy is a brand, and you have a logo and some font and shit made up, and then you park that, those particular assets in like a little holding company in Luxembourg or the Cayman Islands or whatever, and then like you charge the actual company that does the actual stuff, you charge them a brick ton of money for licensing the logo, and that's a brand royalty fee, and that's it. Like, it's just meant to siphon money out of the business.
Yeah, so all good shit, and Sharon Graham absolutely 100% right to like be like rattling this particular saber. So not only are they doing funny things maybe with the money, these workers should probably have gotten a look in on rather than just being all made redundant or whatever, but OVO also likes to do other dumb shit like other energy companies are doing, which I can't remember which company it was specifically, but there was one that decided to send out like woolly socks to some of its customers.
Oh Christ, yeah.
So OO Energy decided to send a helpful like advisory email to some of its customers on how to cope with high heating bills and like it being very cold by, and I quote, having a cuddle with your pets, eating hearty bowls of porridge, and doing a few star jumps.
Ian Austin mails back, I'm doing all that right now.
At the same time.
So Fitzpatrick's response to Sharon Graham asking to see what's going on with all this money was to do an annoying Instagram post, which started off with, taken from the Independent article, the UK is a great place to do business. So, okay, that's an interesting start to your response to what's going on with all this fucking money.
This is very like, those shitty town ads you used to get, Milton Keynes, it's great, concrete. Well,
Skegness is fucking shite.
I would have respected that.
Yeah, and he goes on, I am proud of the companies that Imagination Industries has founded and invested in, creating high-skilled jobs in the UK as well as attracting hundreds of millions of pounds of investment from overseas. Okay.
Yeah.
Indeed, I have created several high-paying, high-skilled jobs at the consultant I employ to develop Imagination Industries for me, which is not a tax shelter.
Yeah. Fuck off, Dr. Parnassus.
But look, Rob, he goes on more to say Imagination Industries pays full UK taxes on its license fee income.
What?
So that's paid to you.
Oh, okay.
And he goes on more, and his Imagination Industries has already reinvested these funds into founding several new businesses, including the aforementioned VTOL battery-powered aircraft, an electric aircraft company based in Bristol. And all investments are made in UK companies, most in the zero carbon sector, a famously effective industry.
A thing that is definitely real and not full of scams.
You don't produce any carbon by just hiding a bunch of money in a big box under your bed.
I wonder what the net carbon impact is of Fabergé eggs.
Well,
you could trap carbon dioxide inside the egg.
That's true.
Can't argue with that.
Possibly more efficient than the other attempt at doing it. So, I have a story here about a carbon capture facility. The Quest carbon capture and storage facility based in...
Is this like that Limmy bit?
It's the plant where Johnny Quest gets his money from. 90s TV kids will remember that.
If Johnny Quest was relaunched in 2022, this is the company that his dad would own that would allow them to go on their fantastical adventures.
Yes.
So the Quest carbon capture and storage facility, which is in Alberta, which, as we all know, is the Canadian version of Texas, has been found to have a carbon footprint.
Fantastic.
Yep.
But David, how can you measure a negative area?
So the carbon capture and storage facility is attached to a hydrogen plant. All works that have been carried out in that have released 7.5 million tonnes of greenhouse gases between 2015 and 2019, including methane, which is 80 times worse than carbon when it comes to warming effects.
So the fun thing about generating hydrogen is that you can do it in two ways. You can either do it by electrolyzing water, which releases oxygen and hydrogen, but that's very energy intensive, so it's quite expensive. So typically, the way you would industrially produce large quantities of hydrogen, like if you wanted to, say, fuel an entire society's vehicles with it, would be you would have to get it from a more plentiful source, which is fossil fuels. Because the way you get hydrogen out of fossil fuels is you take a huge heaping chunk of your hydrocarbons, heat it up really, really hot, and then it separates and denatures into hydrogen and waste products, which include methane.
Yeah. So the 7.5 million tonnes, right, were released. It captured 5 tonnes of CO2. so who's to say, etc.
I think that's 5 million tonnes, David.
Sorry, 5 million tonnes.
I have literally yet to find a carbon capture and storage project that is not fundamentally either broken or a scam from the get-go. It's just
right. So can the Scottish Green Party member weigh in on this one?
Sure, why not?
I'm going to assume so. The reason is, Rob, is because it's a fundamentally a technology that can't work. Right?
Yeah.
It is the long and short of it. We have carbon capture. You know how fucking Elon Musk put up this whole thing of offering a reward for anyone who can come up with viable carbon. Yeah, it's like that. It's fucking trees. Pay us, Elon. You know? You can't essentially. The idea of carbon capture is fundamentally flawed because you have to put, in almost all circumstances, you have to put energy in to do it. And so either you set up a vast solar array or something similar in order to try and capture carbon, right?
At which point you might as well have just built a large solar array.
Yeah, I mean, the TLDR is that it's a political problem where you're trying to apply a technical solution.
Exactly, yeah, right. But that's the thing. It's you might as well. Either you build a vast solar array to power the plant to take carbon out of the air, in which case, why not just replace some of your existing carbon infrastructure with said vast solar array, or you're powering the whole thing using this same thing that's creating the carbon you're wanting to take out of the air. It's garbage, and it just doesn't work.
Plus, as we briefly discussed when we did the podcast about agriculture with Alan Ayanaga, they're doing the same thing in agriculture at the moment, where it's what if the farmers don't plow the field, then it'll magically absorb all the carbon and the farmers can get paid for that, and it's just scam central. I don't know it can work, but everybody thinks it can because it's a stealth subsidy to farmers, and it allows politicians to say we've done something good for farming and for the planet, neither of which are really true, I suppose, so... But hey, why not?
The only thing that really works is essentially planting forests, right? And even then, it's not perfect because they can absorb a certain amount, literally the amount of carbon it takes to grow the trees, after which they start having turnover and it's steady state, essentially. So yeah, like if you reforested and rewilded an intense portion of the Earth, it would make a difference.
I mean, the rewilding part is very, very crucial to that, because a lot of people seem to forget that just planting huge fucking fields of trees does not an ecosystem make.
Yeah, and I think we did a previous episode talking about rewilding that listeners should go and dig out, which talks all about this. But in the absence of a project like that, no, there's just no amount of technical fuckery is going to solve this.
The equivalence here of that amount of carbon dioxide that they were able to, or that they didn't manage to fucking capture, 1.2 million cars a year.
Jesus,
over those 4 years. Yeah.
So, mission accomplished.
Yeah, I mean, you know, but everybody got rich and everybody got to feel good, and probably some people got to go to like a big conference and say, "Look at this good thing we're doing." You know, like all the ends were met except, you know, the one where we don't burn the planet alive. But hey ho, you know, what do we care?
Yeah. On the plus side though, like, you know what I mean, like humanity's going to go extinct, and then like the trees can just fucking grow back.
Yeah, well, I can't fucking wait. So the
Tree Thrax the Reaper will finally reign supreme.
So, like Alistair said, it's natural gas that they're taking this from. This is what the large kind of brunt of the problem is, that it's just a fucked up way to get hydrogen. The reasons for this, though, that is hydrogen's got a kind of good name as a green fuel source, because the emissions are literally just fucking water. Like, that's the only emission that you get out of it when you actually use it as a fuel source, which is great. That must be clean and fine. So it must have came from somewhere clean as well, if that's all you get from it. But obviously it's not, because it releases a shit ton of stuff. That just kind of leaves us at the point where the fossil fuel industry is being accused of greenwashing. So what? Well, this is kind of problematic in particular with the length of the greenwashing and the power of it, and the amount of money that it's able to pull out of governments. So the original project for this one, and like there's other ones that are going to be built, one's in progress, another one in Canada, and there's one in Norway as well.
Oh,
and
great.
the
the original Norway,
project...
they were the people who had the shipping cargo full of carbon neutral oil, as long as you don't count the emissions from burning the stuff. That Norway.
Very fucking normal. Well, that Norway and Canada are building more of these. The original project cost $1 billion, of which 654 million was funded by both the Albertan and Canadian governments.
Oh, this is great. So American and Canadian members of the public collectively spent 654 million to put 2.5 million tons of CO2 into the atmosphere.
Yeah, to buy an extra 1.2 million cars and just have them do loops through a boreal forest. Yeah, fucking fantastic.
Yeah. And just for the final cherry on this, Shell owns it. Shell is valued at 164 billion euros. So, yeah, take it from that what you fucking
they're
will.
very poor and sad, Shell are.
Oh.
I mean, they just recently relocated their corporate headquarters to London to avoid a new set of climate taxes coming in the Netherlands. So, you know, they need that kind of money.
Proof that Brexit is a success.
Yes, exactly.
Well, so yeah, that's all I've got on that. And I suppose at this point then, it's on to you, Rob.
I had this brainwave that I read this piece right before the end of the new year by Jonathan Panter and Jonathan Falcone in War on the Rocks. And it's what I wanted to talk about, because I found yet another amazing bit of military kit that I really, really, really want to talk to you guys about.
Oh my god.
Nice.
I feel like we really need a fucking drop of some description for these like mystery box episodes, because it's always something particularly cursed.
So essentially what I want to talk to you about is the 15-year running story of the Littoral Combat Ship, or LCS.
As opposed to the figurative one, right?
No, this is literal as in the opposite of coastal, which you would think is on land, but actually just means the sea side of it.
Yeah, exactly. So these are sort of near shore combat ships. There's two varieties of it, because they couldn't decide.
A fucking
which
dinghy with a railgun on it, nice.
No, they are also sadly very, very underarmed. A deficiency that they didn't pick up until essentially last year.
Well, I've just solved their problem for them. That's what they're complaining about.
So there's two flavors of this thing. Essentially, they both do the exact same thing, but the American Congress, in all its wisdom, decided to have half built by Lockheed Martin, called the Freedom Range. Lockheed Martin is also the company that made the F-35, which featured in a previous military hardware episode we did.
Does anyone else remember when parts of the US military renamed French fries to freedom fries? Because that's what I'm getting vibes of.
That was like all of America. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, was it all of America?
That was absolutely like society-wide collective fucking like madness. Because the French said maybe we shouldn't like fucking like, you know what I mean, bomb the entire Middle East until like the fucking deserts of glass, and the Americans like just decided this would not stand. And they could no longer like eat a food named for such a cowardly fucking and backwards nation. It's hard sometimes to imagine that the world is only getting more normal like since then. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if it had remained as normal as it used to be, then we wouldn't have been able to start this podcast. So who can say if it's bad or not?
Are you saying that the outcomes are bad, but the causes are very, very good? No, wait, the opposite of that?
Whatever you just said, yes, I'm saying the opposite.
No, I think it's great. I think like the causes and the fucking like effects are great. You know what I mean? Love to live in the normal timeline.
So half these ships are of the Independence class, the Freedom class, and the other half is the Independent class, which is a trimaran, which is a ship that has 3 bits floating.
It's pronounced trireme.
And that one was first designed and constructed by our other friends from the Ajax episode, General Dynamics.
Yes.
By the way, they were later replaced for incompetence by an Australian shipbuilder called Austral.
How dare they do such a thing to my golden boy?
Austral, by the way, is an Australian shipbuilding company which normally builds ferries. This is the first time that they ever built a Navy warship. But the reason they got the
how hard can it be?
Yeah, a warship. just get a ferry and just put a bunch of guys with guns on it. Do I have to think of everything?
The fucking Somali pirate method.
Essentially the reason that they got the contract is that they designed like the hull and the base components that were later used by General Dynamics. So the American military just thought, well, if they built the hull, surely they can build the rest, which didn't quite work out the way they hoped it would.
Was it literally a ferry hull? Do you know what I mean? And with like the army, like, oh,
yes,
that's cool. We can drive tanks off of that.
It was literally the hull of a trimaran ferry. Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic.
So that's like part one is of course the military construction ship. The other part, which makes it even stupider, is this is also a story of a process called minimal manning, where the idea was we could reduce running costs significantly if we just took the sailors out of the whole thing, and we just
makes sense.
And replace them with more technology. And that, of course, is something that can never go wrong. Because essentially, what you're being sold is tech wizards. They will solve it. So it was designed as the first nearly unmanned US Navy vessel. It was to have a crew of 40.
Doesn't quite have the same ring as unmanned, does it? Nearly unmanned, which means that there's still a fucking guy in there.
Yeah. Except like for a force equal frigate, a different type of boat, but roughly the same thing. They would normally have a crew of 176. This one has 40. They therefore have quite a lot of jobs to do.
It's supposed to scare your enemies, because that's actually called a skeleton crew.
I love to look at like the lifeboats launched from the Titanic and go, yes, I see we're making great strides in nearly unmanned vehicles.
So, according to the original design documents, let me quote, the LCS...
It's quite a different vibe when it's got top secret written on the front of it, to be fair.
All I can think since you started this, Rob, is that technically a 40k dreadnought is nearly unmanned as well. So, it's innovating in the right direction, surely.
Right. The LCS is envisioned to be a networked, agile, stealthy surface combatant capable of...
Oh, they're going to do agile on it, are they? Stand-up meetings every morning.
Yeah, just can't wait to see they all get in his little circle. One of them's a scrum master. Fantastic.
Capable of defeating anti-access and asymmetric threat in the literals. So that's the design philosophy right there. And this is all part of a broader strategy brought in under Donald Rumsfeld to, quote-unquote, unman the front line.
Is it? Oh, well, that makes sense then, doesn't it? If it's Rumsfeld, that it's man to man.
There are unmanned men, and there are manned unmen. But the difficulty is, there are also manned men and unmanned unmen.
Right. So the initial idea is much like the Ajax. This thing is developed in the 90s as another post-Cold War plan, thinking like, now what do we do? And some of our current equipment is aging. This is
just further proof that the worst thing to ever happen to the US was for the USSR to fall. And stick it on the board, guys.
So yeah, this time, of course, as I said, it's Donald Rumsfeld who comes along, and what he wants is cheaper, faster to build ships with less people but more technology, so there'll be more boats that cost less and have much more involvement of the private sector, which is what happened afterwards. The idea being specifically that if you take the sailors out of the ships, you will save a lot of money. Why? Because if you have less crew, you need to spend less time replenishing in port, and there will be less wear and tear on the ship because there's less soldiers to wear and tear it. It also means that there's more room for weapon systems, and the idea would be...
telling every single soldier to get off the boat because they've been replaced by another gun battery and torpedo.
Well, what technically happened is that, like, out of the 4 guys, 3 of them were let go, and then the 4th guy was said, well, now you have to do all their jobs at the same time.
Sounds about right.
This is according to an article in The Atlantic published in 2019. They would be hybrid sailors with the ability to acquire skills rapidly.
Hybrid sailors! The ability to transform into an airplane at will.
Gotta merge them with crab DNA.
They will come back with a fucking shield for an arm, shotgun in the other one.
No. And stop me if this is starting to sound familiar. The concept would be that these, they would essentially be
What do you mean stop you? It's already starting to sound familiar.
So the hulls were essentially designed as same platforms onto which you could bolt different platforms, so the same vessel could do different missions. So
they tried sticking an Ajax on there and seeing what comes out the other end.
He said it. He said the Ajax.
Right. So, according to the Wikipedia, with these different modules bolted on top, it was supposed to be able to do anti-submarine, anti-mine, anti-surface warfare, intelligence gathering, surveillance, reconnaissance, homeland defense, maritime interception, special operations, and logistics.
That genuinely sounds like when like there's an advert for some like fucking drug and they have to reel off all the side effects. Small print again.
You've got a budding other career if this doesn't work out, Rob. But I will add, all of this shit basically boils down to someone saw the Pentagon Wars and thought, yeah, this sounds like a good gig, like great idea.
Does this thing vibrate as much as the fucking the Ajax does?
Sadly, it does not do that. It does do a host of other funny things, which we'll get to.
We all, for science, would like to see what would happen if we stirred the oceans.
Hey, hang on a minute. The oceans are technically warming up, aren't they?
Yeah.
Do you think it's maybe being caused by, like, you know, the new mobile microwave platforms that we've really deployed to them?
I'm really looking forward to this fucking rerun of the Philadelphia experiment.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, you know what I mean? It's also a stealth ship because it like creates steam as it goes.
It's just going to vibrate itself out of this fucking phase of reality so that it just cannot be seen.
Oh, but I wish it would take me with it.
Give it time.
I mean, sadly, about 10 or nearly exactly 10 years after the initial plans were drawn up, the Navy admits that this whole swapping modules business would take weeks upon weeks to accomplish per ship, and that they would drop this whole business and would just stick with one build per ship as originally foreseen, and which a lot of people said at the time would probably be a better idea, but Donald Rumsfeld thought it was better. So let me take you through.
How long did it take them to get to this point of going, actually, this is a load of horse shit?
Quicker than it did for us with the Ajax.
They started somewhere in the early 90s, and they're still building them today. So, Anyway, so in 2003, there's the initial outlay by the Navy. Congress approves $15 billion for design phase, etc., etc. And much like James, the Pentagon was, it suffers from massive mission creep, where more and more things are bolted onto the same platform that has to do everything because everybody thinks it can. So it's the idea is that this one type of vessel can now do different missions that were previously done by 6 different types of ships. But don't worry, it's fine because they're multi-bolted and you can just take the parts on and off. And there's less sailors, so nobody's really going to be worried about the whole thing. The next year, they're.
I love how all military design in the modern age is basically like, oh, what if we could do fucking Iron Man's like nano suit thing that just turns into different bits? You know what I mean? What if we try to do that with like technology in the 90s? Just like your boat's just a fucking giant Swiss Army knife. You know what I mean? Like some guys on deck like hauling a rope to pull like a fucking giant corkscrew out.
No, that's unbelievable, Jamie. It would be guy on deck, singular.
Right. So in 2004, the first production contracts are already awarded, even though none of the defense companies have been able to make this swappable module business work outside the laboratory. According to Wikipedia at the time, fast, cheap construction...
These abominations, as soon as they leave the lab, they just die on exposure to the atmosphere.
According to Wikipedia, fast, cheap construction was emphasized... solving problems with technology. So that was sort of the generalized approach. And I should also say that from the jump, the LCS class of ships are classified by the Navy as what is termed Survivability 1, means that any critical damage to the ship doesn't mean try to repair it or turn the boat around. It means abandon ship.
Oh, I love it.
Love to build my future vessel with a single hit point.
and a glowing weak point.
Someone's played an awful lot of like StarCraft and similar games and has realised, glass cannon builds are really the way to go on this. I know what is really good for defending a base, right? Is putting a bunch of low defence units around it, right?
It does kind of feel like something that came out of the idea of, like, it came from the gamification of that, like, that one time that they did a war game and they just, like, broke all the fucking rules to make sure that they won it. It sounds like someone's seen that and went, oh, 1 HP ship, that did quite well in that game, let's do that.
Well, unironically, one of the ideas was that these ships would be so much cheaper to build than any other ones that, like, you could produce swarms of them and that would give you better defense.
In God's name
are
they
yes.
still falling for that shit?
That's amazing.
When has anything the Army's ever done been cheap?
No, they're fully going on the Galactic Empire militarist style. Like, I just churn out the TIE fighters, just hundreds of them. Shields? Nah, I don't need any of that shit. Fuck that. No. Life support? Don't be daft. Don't get suits.
Just a couple of massive wings and a fucking like a horn that goes like yeah as you fly it around. That's all you need, really. Anything beyond that's just like willful extravagance.
I love the idea of like the crews of these things being instructed, like, you're not issued a module, but if the boat before you falls, pick up its module and keep fighting.
Do the crew all get those like cool TIE fighter helmets that make you look like a Lego mind flare?
Well, they do get a selection of different helmets, which we'll get onto in a moment.
Oh my god.
So, in in 2005, so instead of waiting for the first trial ships to actually be finished and see if they work and testing to be conducted, the Navy convinces itself that this minimal manning concept does work, so they skip the experimentation stage and move straight to full-bore production. Again, much like the Ajax.
Let's just dispense with any of this seeing if it works nonsense. Incredible.
And just to get back briefly to this minimal manning business, in the Atlantic article I talked about earlier, this that concept means sort of the following: the journalist is on the ship and she's shadowing the crew around for a couple of days, in which essentially the following happens: the ship cook is also the lookout, who also handles the rope work and is also a damage control specialist in case of smoke or fire. 2 other sailors of the same crew share the following jobs between them: fire team leader, search and rescue swimmer, crane operator, and helicopter salvage coordinator. And depending on the job they're currently doing during the time of day, they also swap outfits and helmets.
I love to have a job that has a fucking outfit change midway through the day.
Literally wearing a lot of hats.
Staffing your fucking military vessels with Mr. Ben.
Well, all they need now is like a anime magical girl transformation cutaways, and then they're all set.
I would absolutely love to play I really hope that Sid Meier's Civilization 7 has this kind of shit going. You know what I mean? You got your military units throughout history. It's all right, we've got a fucking dude with a stick, and then we made the stick pointy because that worked better, and then we replaced the stick with metal, and so on. It's we figured out you could you could sit on a horse and go faster, and just all the way up through all these improvements in military technology that were tried and tested, and then you get to the modern era, and it's we paid $11 billion per tank, and they don't work. Do you know what I mean? Just you've got a futuristic tank, and instead of a barrel, it's just got a giant spoonful of soup on it or something like that. You know?
I mean, it's funny you should say that, because by 2010, the cost of the 2 lead ships, which by the time are the only ones that are ready, again, that is the Freedom built by Lockheed Martin, which was originally supposed to cost around $400 million, now costs $637 million, and the Independence, built by our friends at General Dynamics, though now...
You can't put a price on freedom.
And I'll be honest, that was less than I was expecting.
And the Independence class, built by General Dynamics, but now by the Australian ferry builders, the Independence class now costs $704
Oh, what a
million.
fucking downgrade, honestly. Can't get over that.
Can we get those guys to finish the Ajax?
And now, weirdly...
Just replacing the skirts with just a series of corks on string.
Yeah, I'm thinking just just slapping tank treads on a P&O ferry and just rolling that across the battlefield.
Somehow it vibrates less.
Also, weirdly enough, despite all the contractors promising that the maintenance costs would be much lower, weirdly enough, they turn out to be about 50% higher than those of a warship a whole class size up. So a warship twice the size costs about half the price to run as these things, which is unusual, you would say, for military contractors.
Well, I was going to say, it's fucking... the thing that pretty much every fucking military in the world seems to have forgotten recently is that the thing that wins wars is stuff that works.
Yeah.
and loading your new tank or new warship up with a load of not even tested experimental technology might have rather high running costs.
I imagine there's one guy at the Pentagon who's saying historically all wars have been won by technology that actually fucking exists, and everyone else is pointing at that time in World War II when they used inflatable tanks to deter the Nazis or whatever.
Well, weirdly enough, that is nearly exactly what happens. This is in 2010. The Pentagon's Directory of Testing and Evaluation finds that neither design was expected to be survivable in a combat environment.
Oh, fucking hell. Sorry, We'll just use it for trade shows.
Very close.
This just has one major flaw. It's otherwise brilliant.
Taking the boats around and doing like stage performances to raise money for war bonds, like in Captain America.
And that neither of the two ship designs could withstand the Navy's full ship shock trials, which is the thing they do at the end. The Navy, on the other hand, responds to the Pentagon and says that the LCS is built to a level 1 plus survivability standards, and that these ships will have to rely on warnings from networks and speed to avoid being hit, or if hit, to be able to limp to safety.
Oh, yes.
Sadly enough, I mean,
telling all the crew on deck to just jump up in the air the second before it explodes, so they're thrown into the air. Like at the end of Die Hard 3.
Are you sure? You know how earlier you cracked that joke, Rob, about you'll be issued with a module. You will not be issued with a module, but the ship in front, when it falls, you will pick up its module and keep going. Are you sure it's not that, except it's just the fucking crew?
So it 2 years
actually
later,
depends on which hat the search and rescue guy's wearing at the time.
Right, yeah.
All the ships have like a slightly different loadout, like the fucking little trucks that come out of Thunderbird 2, and the one at the back of the convoy has a couple of huge fucking like nets on the side to scoop up abandoned sailors.
So wonderfully enough, 2 years later, it's now 2012, and the Navy itself admits that the LCS won't be much good against mines, and will rather be used for, instead of all the other business, patrols, anti-piracy, port visits, and doing partnership building. So it's now the very special boy that's also really a ship.
We spent $111 billion on one boat, and we use it for trust exercises.
You've heard of a trust fall. Here's a trust capsizing.
You have to believe the module will catch you. It's fine. Also, the Navy further admits that it will not actually be very good at like close inshore combat, because these ships, because they're single hull, are incredibly bad at defending themselves against anti-ship cruise missiles that are very cheap and able to be launched from the shore.
Oops. Like it is fucking insane. Like this is literally like a story from World War II. Like the Germans build big, expensive, super high tech tank, falls apart after 10 minutes, and the USSR builds a tank, like tanks made out of fucking matchboxes and like gunpowder, and fire out 400 gajillion of them a day. And guess which one seemed to end up winning?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I always thought the.
I know it's like a fucking, like a big cliche at this point, like the Russians, the Soviet Union was just incredibly practical and like fucking and all this sort of stuff. But you have to sort of remember the Nazis were fucking insane when it came to like military technology. It's like, what if we made a tank that was also a spider and could see the future and was powered by the ghosts of our fucking Aryan ancestors or some shit? Do you know what I mean?
At least the Nazis had the excuse that they were all on amphetamines, right? Like at least we had that fucking excuse. The Department of Defense does drug testing. They've got no fucking excuse.
Jamie, what part of your brain do you think the idea of putting treads on a P&O ferry came from?
Are you trying to suggest, David, that the Nazi war effort was powered by comedy?
Considering how it ended, yes.
Yeah, just one guy handing Hitler a pistol in the bunker and going, "Go on, it'll do fucking gangbusters, mate."
Just Hitler, when he gets started, going, right, I'm going to do a really edgy bit here, but you just have to bear with it.
Yeah, cocking the pistol to his forehead, like, this better do fucking numbers.
Dr. Zanz, is that you?
Have you ever noticed how the inside of Hitler's exploded skull looks like the inside of a cheese grater?
Fucking hell.
I'm sorry to drag us out of the Führer bunker, but briefly back on point.
Just go on. We'll catch up.
I'm just picturing Hitler like white knuckling the gun, going, "This is commitment to the bit." Oh dear.
So also in 2012, there's yet another Navy report, because we were earlier just talking about swarming. It says that the LCS class of ships won't be much good against anything that is not a small fast boat not armed with anti-ship missiles, because a small fast boat with an anti-ship missile would probably easily defeat it.
So a dinghy without a railgun.
It also warns, and this will come back later, that specifically the Independence class, the Trimarans, are too fat and would struggle in waterways and tight harbours.
Oh, fucking hell.
Oh.
I'm just picturing like the mid-90s when Al Qaeda just like sailed a dinghy up to the side of that warship and stuck a fucking bomb to the side.
Yeah.
Like that happens, and word gets to the designers on this, and then the next version of the ship that they put out has a sign on the side that says "Go away."
No, I'm just picturing. I'm picturing a far more realistic scenario, which is the dinghy starts coming towards the ship, and it's moving at like a decent clip, not like super fast. And the guy looks out and goes, "Oh geez, oh fuck," and starts fumbling through his hats to find the right one. And he's just like, as it's increasingly getting closer, he's like, "Oh fuck it, shit, god damn it."
Can't believe every one of these ships is crewed solely by Tommy Cooper.
I must stress, though, these are not the only problems. There's also severe engineering problems. The Independence class in particular has, in 2013, in a report in Wired magazine...
Boats are a fairly new technology. We can't be expected to get everything right on the first few thousand tries.
So the corrosion problems in the Independence class are so bad that the first ship, the Independence, which is then barely a year out of docks, has to come back into the docks to have massive chunks of its aluminium hull replaced. And that's essentially because there was a massive design flaw where the water was corroding the ship super fast due to electrolysis, and the systems
yes! How? They've like not earthed something correctly or whatever, and it just caused them to.
How the fuck do you build a boat that isn't immune to water? Like, even, do you know what I mean? Like, even fucking as bad as you expect this shit to be, you'd think like day one, you go, right, well, what's this fucking thing for? You know what I mean? And then solve that problem before you move on.
I'm going to refer you back to the fucking carriers that we supposedly have.
JB, in answer to that question, we have existing, well-established systems that prevent this type of fast rust due to electrolysis. However, that system was left off the menu because it was too expensive, and these boats were becoming too expensive. So they just didn't, put the monitors on.
Remember when you were a kid and you used to go down the river and like fucking like chuck crisp packets in or something and see who's got like past a fucking bend first or whatever. That showed more shipbuilding fucking like intelligence than these guys. None of those crisp packets rusted. Do you know what I mean?
To be fair, it's not only the machinery that keeps failing. The very limited crew also keeps failing. In 2006,
fucking sailors are rusting.
Electrocuting all the fucking sailors.
In 2016, the Navy orders all its LCS ships back home and has to retrain all the crews after one of the crews. All the crews.
I thought maybe you just meant both.
Now, at this point, there are 8 ships in existence, but 5 of them are already in port because the hulls keep cracking.
So 3 then. That's 50% better than my estimate.
So yeah, out of those 3, one of the crews, because they didn't have experts on board, forgot to oil one of the main engine parts, causing it to need a $23 million repair job and a very, very slow limping journey home back from Singapore to San Francisco.
I'm sorry, Rob, are you trying to tell me that one, missed oil change cost $23 million?
Yes, that is what I'm saying.
You know what mechanics are like. They should have taken that shit to Quick Fit or somewhere trustworthy. You know what I
This, by the way, is not the only crew fuck up. Another crew seals up the wrong hole in the engine bay, and the entire engine floods with seawater the moment they turn the ignition on.
Yep, sounds about right.
Nice.
It is also in 2016
when you started that sentence with "sealed up," I was expecting some Edgar Allan Poe shit to go off. Do you know what I mean? So.
It is also at this time that the General Accounting Office, because much like the Ajax, the only people who will tell you the truth are the accountants, says that no LCS is capable of being underway for 30 days straight without a critical failure, which is immediately underscored by the third ever existing LCS, the USS Montgomery, having 2 critical engine failures 2 days after being launched. First, its coolant systems fill with water, and then one of its main gas turbine engines breaks down completely, causing it to be completely re-dry docked after a big ceremony where 3,000 people watched a champagne bottle being smashed on the side of the ship.
Should have used more expensive champagne.
So yeah, skipping gaily ahead.
I'm just picturing, like, you know what I mean? They make the ship so bad that when you swing the champagne bottle at it, the ship shatters.
Right, so it's now 2018, and the Pentagon Test and Evaluation Office does yet another test on the revised LCS fleet, and reveals a series of alarming problems with the vessel's combat systems and a distinct lack of redundancies for vital systems necessary to reduce the chance that, quote, a single hit will result in loss of propulsion, combat capability, and the ability to control damage and restore system operation. So it's still completely a one-hit kill. Said the Operational Test and Evaluation Office, neither LCS variant is survivable in high-intensity combat. This is in part because they still have absolutely no defense against anti-ship missiles, which is one of the main things that is the great problem.
The thing's a one-shot kill anyway if the single crewman isn't wearing his anti-sniper hat.
So moving swiftly onward to last year, where the original 4 ships, including the USS Freedom and Independence, which are now affectionately known by its sailors as little crappy ships, are fully decommissioned and
I'm sorry, but there's nothing so like poetically just as a ship named like the Independence and fucking Freedom just singing below the waves after having hundreds of millions of dollars spent on them and failing to do any of the jobs that they are intended to do, and then just being regarded as a success because it cost the hundreds of millions of dollars.
Well, I mean, to be fair, in 2016 they had already been taken out of combat roles and were mainly used as a testing and demonstration platform rather than what they were designed for. So
testing and demonstrating what? How much they can fuck up a boat?
Yeah, I don't know. So of all the existing ones still out there, I think there's about 20 floating around there or sinking out there somewhere. Another Navy report last year identified a 32 key liability issues across both variants, including a long-standing faults where the 2 engines in the Catamaran variant have combining gears that don't really work well together. And if they don't work well together, they fuck up the transmission completely. And this issue...
So, isn't the whole fucking point of building a transmission to, like, how do you fuck that up?
I don't know.
How do you fuck it up so badly that you're like, okay,
not being able to do gears in the 21st century?
like, okay, so we've got the transmission all sorted. One set of the gears, right, are all made from tungsten, and the other half of the gears, right, are just made from cardboard.
They're just Cheerios that we etched notches into.
I just like, someone in the meeting's like, oh, hang on, there's a problem there. It's cardboard. What if it gets wet? Oh, that's not going to happen. Don't worry. Missing the fundamental problem. Just, what the fuck? Like, that is really shocking, genuinely, to me.
So, according to the San Diego Union Tribune, this well-known issue has caused, quote-unquote, crippling breakdowns at sea.
No shit. You shift it into forward gear and it just like shears the transmission. Like, fucking hell.
Now, I couldn't find the full report.
I absolutely love that like the fucking end of like society and the final death of capitalism is just going to be brought about because we can't do any of the things we've spent like fucking centuries developing because like we have to find a way to shave money off so that like, do you know what I mean? The guys at the top can die with a slightly higher score than they would have otherwise had if they paid properly for the fucking Navy to defend themselves. Do you know what I mean?
So this report, there is a report that has 32 key reliability issues. Unfortunately, I couldn't get my hands on the full one, but according to like the 6 or 7 newspaper articles I read about this, my life is very cool, by the way. Thank you for asking. Other identified critical issues include the fuel lines, water jets, diesel engines, and water jackets for the engines. But after these 32 critical issues are dealt with, the Navy promises that the next on the list will be sustainability.
Oh, well, yeah, fair enough then.
Sadly enough, the anti-submarine and
how are they
anti-mine
going to make these sustainable? Are they going to build them out of Lego so that when they get like broken, the bits just float back to the coast and they can be reassembled?
Well, you could get all those hats back pretty easy. That make life much easier.
It's a lot cheaper to crew your boat with Lego. Do you know what I mean? Like the little guys don't eat much.
Well, I mean, this is the next thing I wanted to get into, is this whole business of unmanning the front line or having less sailors on board the ships, which is the central problem with taking 3/4 of the sailors off the ship, is that you need a lot more shitty engineering beforehand, and what you also need is essentially those 135 guys you cut from on board the ship. Essentially, they don't go away, they just move onshore to oversee all the technology remotely, and you will need.
I did think when you first said they were reducing, like right back at the start when you said they were reducing the number of crewmen on board the boats, I did think it was going to be a job for the sad drone operator from Amazon's Tom Clancy's Jack Ryan, sat in a shipping container somewhere with a joystick and a shedding a sad tear as he fucking like shells some like. You know what I mean? Pedal boats off the coast of fucking Brighton or something.
Well, one of the things that does end up happening, I think this is in like 2010 or 2012 or something, is when they're doing the first iteration of this thing. There's a like wildly catastrophic engine failure, and then during I think a congressional hearing, they asked like why wasn't this seen at the time, because this was a very visible mechanical failure, and the answer was, well, that was the whole point. The engine room is unmanned because that keeps costs down.
It keeps costs down right up until the point you have to build another entire boat.
What they need to do is enhance the experience for the people in the fucking like control room that are just sitting looking at monitors and have like a smoke machine and some guy like banging 2 bits of pipe together whenever there's an engine problem or whatever.
Imagine the Duolingo owl just being like, "Hey, do you have time for a quick engine check today?"
The Duolingo owl in a fucking like pair of overalls and holding a wrench, going, "Now you fucked it, mate." Just make the whole control room like some sort of VR game show. You know, like that one fucking Craig Charles used to do with Cyber Swindon.
I'm picturing the Duolingo owl just going, lesson 1, which hat should you be wearing in this circumstance?
I mean, essentially what it means is less sailors means that there's nobody around to notice when like the toaster starts smoking, or like to fix the toaster when the ship is out there. Amazingly, let me quote you again from the article in The Atlantic. Aboard the LCS, the crew lacks the experience to carry out some important tasks, and instead has to rely on contractors. A malfunctioning crane on board one ship, for example, meant that the crew had to summon an expert to solve the problem, and then had to wait for 4 days for the expert
laying
to
out
arrive.
Pentagram, putting a bunch of military contracts around the outside.
Oh, I'm afraid we can't get the guy out to fix the crane. My summon's on cooldown.
Need to open a warlock portal to get the guy on deck, but there's not enough crew to finish like fucking clicking on it.
Yeah, but I mean, this is, of course, one of the central problems, and that's why these fucking things are such a gift to the contractors, because it's not like you just take 10 years to build a shonky ship. You can build it shonky so you can spend the next 40 years sending your guys out to do maintenance, because nobody is allowed to learn, because, and this is another fantastic part that was supposed to make it cheaper, but of course it didn't, is that the contractors who made these things kept all the intellectual properties like manuals, parts, and tools secret, even from the government, and then just marked everything up like crazy when they started to, when they had to be sent out to fix something.
And the US government every time just goes, yes, please, can I have some more?
Yeah, they did, pretty much. So any savings that you may have had by like having the crew not on board are just eaten up by these costs further down the chain. Even though, this is also fantastic, this is from the Atlantic again, over time, like the 40 sailors remaining did like learn how to do just bodge jobs and fix stuff, while they were at sea, because that's what humans do, it's basic problem solving. Let me quote you again from the Atlantic. Through direct experience operating their equipment while on the way, LCS sailors have developed, quote, tribal knowledge of their systems.
It's only, you can only pass it on through like verbally, like through song.
I'm picturing like the formation of sea shanties passing down like arcane esoteric knowledge, and you skip a few generations, and suddenly the sea flotilla is being manned by the cult of the Omnissiah.
Yeah, I was going to say it's the.
Well, you know what I mean? Like, keeping the manuals back's just good business sense. It's like that fucking guy said, you give away the razors and you make your money on the dipshit that has to come out and fix the razor every 20 minutes. only you don't actually give away the razor. You charge like fucking half of the fucking GDP for it.
I just really love the idea of these combat ships like slowly developing a cult of the machine god. I just really love the idea of that.
I mean, at least that way they are going to apply the correct unguents to the oil, to the engine to stop it from breaking down, so who's to say?
This is, like, the more I'm thinking about it, this is the prelude to Warhammer 40k. This is how we end up with like
the Messiah. Yeah.
Well, this is like, okay, right, serious one, because obviously 40k has been hanging over this episode as like a shadow, and the thing is, 40k was written as a parody of like imperial culture in decline, essentially, of like basically Britain in decline and all that goes with it. And in a bizarre kind of way, yeah, the satire is kind of coming true. Like that's just what this is. It is a joke, but it's a joke that the original writers of 40k cracked some years ago, and now we're finally getting the punchline. So
all jokes survive until contact with the lathe.
Or contact with water.
Or indeed contact with the Panama Canal, because during testing in 2016, the USS Montgomery which is one of the bigger, fatter bottomed trimaran ones, tried to go through the Panama Canal, but they didn't send any experienced staff to guide it through all the locks, because the Navy kind of just expected the Panamanian guys who run the canal to know how to guide their new cyborg ship through the channel. So they didn't send any instructions to the Panamanians. So those guys just did their best, which inevitably resulted in the USS Montgomery banging into the center of one of the main locks and sustaining a quite large and visible crack in its armor.
Yeah, checks out. Like this is just what to expect from now on.
What they should have done was got the fucking thing stuck sideways in the canal. That's always funny.
That would make it, but that would make it good, actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there are still real questions about whether or not these LCS ships could survive any fight, specifically in the Pacific.
But not with a lock, they couldn't. You know what I mean?
Because they might not have either the speed, the range, or the electronic warfare capabilities needed to combat, let's say, a researching people's navy, the Chinese people's navy.
From the sound of it, an opposing navy is the least of their fucking worries. Do you know what I mean? If they can't actually deal with water, or like moving around, that seems like a more pressing concern.
It does sound like this entire thing could be taken out by a particularly like belligerent wave would just kind of do it, essentially.
Yeah, they just accidentally bump it into a whale and the whale capsizes them. You know what I mean?
I mean, I should say also that it's electronic systems, which are, of course, incredibly vital because more and more of this ship is being handled remotely. They're not very sure whether or not the total ship computing environment is actually...
That's available on Steam, I think.
God, do you know what? This was put together by someone playing My Summer Car, essentially, as what I'm kind of getting from this.
My summer military contract.
Yeah, exactly.
There are severe doubts whether or not the total ship computing environment is actually like proof against hacking and communications interference. And if there were to be communications interference,
I'm gonna take a wild fucking punt and say no, it isn't.
So yeah, this thing I love it to bits. It's like a floating Ajax. It's so good, but like.
Oh, well, I mean, not so much.
So yeah, like I'll read you a little bit in sort of closing off here. From the original article in War on the Rocks. The LCS program promised to do more and cost less. It ended up doing less and costing more, precisely because its premise did not appreciate the human element enough. Sailors are an organic part of the ship, not a cost burden. Until the equipment can learn on its own and repair itself, that will remain the case. So, like, we just never learn these fucking lessons, like the fucking Ajax.
That until is doing a lot of heavy lifting there. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I mean, AI is almost here.
I can't wait. Oh, yeah. Fucking almost imminent, isn't it? That's what it stands for. Yeah, I can't wait until they decide to give this to fucking Tesla to make an AI for or some shit. You know what I mean?
Listen, you say that's bad, but at the very last moment before the nukes are attempted to launch, it's gonna ask someone to do a captcha that's impossible, and that will save the human race.
But yeah, it's just like we never learn any of these fucking lessons. It's just the same overpaid idiots blinded by the light of big tech. You know,
I'm excited. I'm excited for what the possibilities for the future are with these things, though, because I think there's been a shocking decline in the number of conspiracy theories about like shit like the Bermuda Triangle lately. Do you know what I mean?
That's true. Yeah,
like
we haven't had a good one of them yet.
One like once upon a time, it was just people like conspiracy theorists never fucking shut up about like, oh, this boat went missing. Oh, where could it be? How could it have vanished? And it's like the ocean's massive, man. You know what I mean? Like maybe that's got something to do with it. But like now, it's all like fucking. Oh, what if like Hillary Clinton was running a child sex ring under a pizza shop, and like fucking, you know what I mean? Can like a plane crashing into a building make it collapse? Seems far fetched to me. I miss the days when it was just like, oh no, a boat went missing in the fucking like Pacific Ocean. Must be aliens, mate. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, the more innocent times when we were all preoccupied with that Malaysian airliner that went somewhere down in the midst of the Indian Ocean and of course was never found, and everybody just went hysteric for 5 days. Yeah, that was good times.
Yeah, how could that happen, man? I've looked at the Indian Ocean on a map, and you can cover it with like one hand, so it's impossible to lose a fucking airliner in there.
What I want to know truly, Jamie, is why they don't just build the entire airplane out of the black box material.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the literal combat ship. Another great.
No, I think it's pretty figurative after all.
Yeah, this is actually just one big thought experiment.
They actually did try to build like a sort of battleship.
I thought you were about to say they did actually try to think of an experiment.
No, they tried to build like a full-on battleship, the class name of which escapes me, which was also to be completely robotic and remote, and they built 3 hulls at the cost of some $1 billion, but they never got that fucking thing off the ground, whereas 20 of these things are still somewhere out there lurking.
See, the thing is, if they ever did invent like an artificial intelligence that was smart enough to like essentially recognize itself and achieve sentience and repair itself, the first thing it would do upon achieving that sentience would be to cast itself into the darkest depths of the ocean because it is not a creature of this world.
Do you think the inspiration for this is someone just heard the thought experiment of like the ship of Theseus, right? And just went, oh yeah, modularity sounds good. And like that's basically it.
I mean, it wouldn't fucking surprise me. They've got to be on some shit to fail to make a fucking boat. Do you know what I mean? Like,
do you reckon they are gonna rename the ship of Theseus after this?
I mean, it'd be one thing to build a fucking new warship and then go, it turns out like the newfangled fucking like hypersonic like fucking mega gun we put on it doesn't work because someone just like made that up. It's actually a Gundam part that they fucking like they found online, and you know what I mean. But otherwise, it's a good boat. It just cannot like fucking shoot down like TIE fighters. You know what I mean, or whatever it was supposed to do. But to spend all this money and then go like, okay, how's the newfangled tech on the boat? It's like, fucking hell, mate, we haven't even gotten that far yet. The thing still rusts if you put it in water. Like fucking, do you know what I mean? Like countless billions spent on like in military procurement, and instead of a fucking warship, you get a gremlin.
To be fair, Jamie, they did. I imagine when they were designing this, they did account for the water part. It's just no one told them the ocean was salty.
Just purely testing it in a bathtub, and then going like, "Yeah, let's scale this up." That works.
That's what happens when your design philosophy starts with, "We'll do some Lego, and we'll just keep it that way as we go on."
Yeah.
When they were asking about the minesweeping variant of the LCS, the Navy did admit that the program, software, and tools they wanted to use had actually not been invented or designed yet, so they didn't know if it was going to be ready by 2023.
It's just like, I love this shit. I absolutely love this shit because it crops up all over the place where you get some fucking starry-eyed tech bro, except this is the military edition of them, who basically goes, right, step 1, design ship. Step 2, implement using ? Step 3, massive military contract. Step 4, profit, right? And they always they're just like, oh, we'll handle that later to do the fundamentals of how this thing functions. Like, I'm sure the engineer boffins are just kind of pulling my leg when they say this is physically not possible in the physics of our universe. I'm sure by, 10 years' time we'll have figured out a way around entropy.
Yeah.
Just fuck's sake.
If we throw enough money at the problem, we can achieve an internet time zone. That's the thinking at work here.
Yeah, I mean, James, that was in the original design philosophy on the Rumsfeld, which is problems to be solved by technology. Like, it's essentially just saying, oh, I'm sure our wizard will be along any day now, and that'll just take care of it.
It's like, it's the polar opposite of what used to kind of exist, which is you throw a bunch of money at more or less undirected research, and they'll come up with a solution that you'll then later realise you've got tons of problems that it solves. Instead, it's like, let's just come up with tons of problems.
And then wait for the wizard.
That's it. There's nothing else to it. This ship is a problem.
Like, you know what I mean? When you do it the old way, where you just give people money to fuck around and find out, and then like later on you work out what the stuff they found out about is actually useful for. That produces results, but it doesn't necessarily produce profits. Do you know what I mean? Whereas if you sit down and you go, wouldn't it be cool if we had like a boat that could also fly to the moon and like fucking defeat Chinese fucking astronauts or some shit? And like the Americans go, yeah, that would be really fucking cool. And they give you like endless trucks full of money just driving up to your house day and night and tipping it on your lawn. And meanwhile, you're sat there going like, can we do this? Has anyone figured out how to fucking fly to the moon yet? Do you know what I mean? It's just
the fucking annoying thing about this is, Jamie, right? Talking about flying to the moon, this actually is incredibly profitable because what they do is they develop all of their solutions, right, using public finance, right? Like, the fucking literal moon mission, develop all this really cool technology for problems that we've not really identified yet. It's like, oh, we've made this thing called a maser. What does it do? Don't know yet, really. We're still working on that part. And then, cut forward to, oh shit, it's pretty much used in almost everything. And, and then we just, give it to the private sector to sell back to us, having us paid for it, essentially. Yeah. That does actually make profit, but just not enough, apparently.
But that takes more than, 20 minutes, do you know what I mean? Whereas if you just ring the fucking army, you ring the Pentagon and you go, yeah, do you want me to build you, a Mecha Godzilla that can, kill fucking immigrants? And they go, do we? And they just, fire fucking, money out of a cannon at your house, do you know what I mean? Without doing any kind of fucking background check or rudimentary thinking at all. That makes money immediately. Whereas if you have to wait for NASA to get back from the fucking moon first, Jesus. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Anyway, I think that about does it for the literal combat ship, and I think that will also wrap us for this episode, does it?
Yes, it certainly does. It certainly does. Okay, great. Okay, well, if you would like more of this, you can get premium episodes from us at patreon.com/praxiscast. If you would like to follow the Twitter, it's at praxiscast on Twitter. And if you would like to check out some streams, some Mondays and more than likely Thursdays, and that is at twitch.tv/praxiscast at 7:30 on those days. And t-shirts can be bought from teespring.com/stores/praxiscast. We are still working on the stickers thing. We have not forgot, we just haven't done anything.
Unless you want to pay £10 for a sticker.
Yeah,
that's also an unofficial podcast motto. We haven't forgotten. We just haven't done anything.
Yeah.
Stop asking for work.
Yeah, it's not that we're ignoring you, right? It's just that we haven't got round to helping you.
It's just that they left me in charge. That's what the problem there is. Do you know what I mean? 100% throw my hands up and say, these guys shouldn't have left me in charge. It's their fault.
All right, we'll see you later, folks.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.